Hello, I'm State Representative Ted Nesbit of the 8th District in Butler and Mercer counties. And after last year's lengthy budget negotiations, a spending plan is now in place that protects taxpayers by controlling spending and preventing increases to sales and income taxes. My guest for today's program will update us on the latest budget news and what we may expect in the next spending plan. So joining me today is Majority Appropriations Chairman Representative Bill Adolph. So Representative Adolph, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, and if you could explain to my viewers a little bit about your background and where you come from and what part of the state you represent.
Sure. Well, Delaware County, for those that may not be familiar with where Delaware County is, it borders the Delaware River. It touches the city of Philadelphia and to the east, and Chester County to the west. I live in Springfield Township, which is the eastern part of Delaware County, and it's the 165th district. And my district takes in Springfield Township, Marple Township, Radnor Township, which is home of the Villanova Wildcats, the national championships, and the small borough of Morton.
Okay, and you're the Appropriations Chair, the Majority Appropriations Chair. Could you explain to people that don't follow this what that is and what that means?
Okay. Well, number one, it's an elected position inside the caucus. Okay, so there's a lot of standing committees that the Speaker of the House appoints a chairman. The only chairman that is elected is Appropriations Chair. Okay, and your peers elect you. Okay, and every 2 years you run for election and in my case, Appropriations Chair. And I felt comfortable running for that position. I served on the committee for some time, and being a partner in a small accounting firm, I understand the tax laws, and we're used to profit and loss statements, and revenue should equal expenses. So that's what it does, and you get elected, and whoever gets 51% of the vote inside your own caucus, you get elected Appropriations Chair. And then you select a committee to work with you. And it's always been my effort to try to have a diverse committee, meaning members from all over the state, not just from one section. And I feel that's necessary, Representative, because if you just have a slew from southeast or northeast or northwest or central Pennsylvania,
you don't get a flavor of the whole state.
Absolutely correct.
So in a broad sense, walk through what the process is. We had hearings in the, had hearings in the spring where different agencies come and they ask basically for the request for their budgets. Yes. And then you as the Appropriations Committee kind of study that and then bring it to the rest of the folks and put together a budget. So kind of fill that out with the details on that.
Okay. Let's start with the first step. The first step, the month of February, the governor comes in to the House of Representatives, into that chamber, joint session for a one-day budget address. Okay, and he gives his proposed budget, total spending, total revenues, how is he going to arrive at the revenue, so forth and so on. So that starts, and then the week later, as you said, we go into 3 weeks worth of budget hearings, and I'm sure your county commissioners and your local supervisors or commissioners do the same. You bring in your department heads, and these are called cabinet members at the state level. Department of Education, Department of Public Transportation, so forth and so on. We bring in university presidents, and they have a budget request. And they try to explain to the appropriations hearings, it's all televised, okay, why they need X amount of dollars. And we ask questions like, how many employees do you have? How many vacancies do you have? Why do you need more money for this? And it's a very, very interesting process, very tiring process, but that's the only way you can do it.
And this year had to be a unique year because we were so long in getting last year's budget done that it was just right after that we went into this year's budget. So you've been around a while. Is this the worst budget year you've seen in terms of last year getting things done?
Without question. it was all uncharted territory. It really was. Never saw a budget go this long. Never did we have a budget hearings for, in this case, it was 16, 17, and the fiscal year 15, 16 budget wasn't signed into law yet. So it was very, very confusing. And you tried to stay focused on what you're supposed to be doing, but inevitably you were still talking about 15, 16.
So in the governor's proposal, he has requested several tax increases. Could you briefly describe what he's requesting?
Well, number one, his total spending is a little over $33 billion, all right? And that's roughly a $3 billion increase in spending. So our revenues, and I think our projections are pretty good. We may be $80 million to $100 million over our projections, but it's going to be close. Okay, we're going to be shy, about $3 billion. Okay,
of his request.
Of his request.
Right.
Okay, of his request. So, and he has a increase in state income tax. Okay, our current state income tax is 3.07. He'd like to see that go up to 3.4. Okay, and significant tax increase. Okay, for the working people and for those small business folks. Okay, he has an expansion of sales tax and or a increase in the percentage. Okay, and like I said, sales tax, I think hits the lower income folks higher than any other income category.
So last year's budget was roughly $30 billion. He's asking for $33 billion. Can you kind of give us a breakdown of kind of where some of the big numbers of those spending come from?
Okay. Well, let's just talk about mandatory increases, something that we have no control over. And we've been talking about it for several years now. We have not been successful enough to get it passed, is both the state employee and the school employee pension plans. Combined, you're looking at almost a $500 million increase between the two. 340 for one, 125 million for the state employees.
So if we spend the same amount on everything else from last year as this year, we're still looking at, what is that, 500 million increase? 500 million. Without any other changes?
Just those two issues by themselves. Debt service will go up about $40 million. You have to pay your debt. And then you also have, we've had tremendous federal mandates come down in the Department of Human Services, okay, and increased services to the aging, increased services to the disabled, and so forth. And that representative is probably the fastest growing part of the budget, is the Department of Human Services, only followed by the Department of Corrections, okay? And we're trying to get a control on that. We are the legislative branch. We're not the administrative branch. But I think we need to try to get a better idea of why our Department of Corrections is increasing by the percentage they are every year. So you have those four expenses, and I'm going to say those four expenses probably add up almost close to $1 billion, almost close to $1 billion. So without raising a single line item, okay, I can see our expenses going up minimally of $1 billion plus, probably closer to 1.3 once you start adding in contractual agreements that we have with our state employees and health benefits, okay? So they start adding up, and the next thing you know, you're at $1.5 billion, okay? Over and above last year's expenses without giving an increase to any other line items.
And education is always the hot button issue in funding for the budget. So even without any increase in the education budget, you're looking at those figures. So Has there been any discussion yet? I know your staff has been trying to get the details of this hammered out, and there's a website, pabudget.com, where they can check the details. But what are some of the things that you do now to get into the process of really getting into hammering out the details of the budget?
Well, obviously, we start with the what we call the cost to carry budget, which is mandatory spending, okay, and level funding, okay, on all those line items. And then we get input from individual members, okay. And it goes from agricultural line items to health line items to education line items. And we start working on it. And we try to put, see what the revenue is. Okay, I'm a big believer, and sometimes I've been criticized for trying to find one-time revenue sources. Okay, but in my opinion, it's tax dollars that came in that has not been used, and we've been doing that. And it's getting harder and harder to find those one-time revenues. But I can tell you that I never received a phone call from a taxpayer back home saying that they didn't want me to use one-time revenues. It balances the budget. I think it's a good accounting procedure. Some people call it zero-based accounting, but it does help. But there's other sources of revenue out there, Representative, other than taxes. Okay, obviously there's some social consequences in any of this, and that's obviously we are talking about liquor privatization. Okay, and I, for one, I live in a tri-state area, and I live a lot closer to Jersey and the state of Delaware than I do the city of Harrisburg. Okay, so it's nothing for people in my hometown to drive across the river and pick up their weekend beer supply, or if they're having a shindig at their place, to go over there and bring it back. You're not supposed to do it, but if you check the license plates over there, that's that. So I think we could generate some revenue, okay, through licenses if we let the private sector people handle it. And number two, is some revenue from casino licenses, from some internet gaming licenses that other states are involved in that we have not taken on yet. So there's other sources of revenue that not necessarily hit the taxpayer's pocketbook.
Well, I know as a member of the gaming committee, we've been very busy having hearings and exploring other ways to raise revenue, noticing that there's going to appear to be a shortfall. We have to raise revenue, and in my opinion, the last place we look is to raise taxes. So if we can do other things and maybe even look at some cuts moving forward so that we don't have to get a broad-based tax income. But once again, these are difficult decisions, which is why we had such a contentious year last year. I'm optimistic this year's just going to go better.
Yeah.
Where are you on that?
You have to remain optimistic. The governor in his budget speech said that there was only two ways. This tax and spend category or drastic cuts. In my opinion, Representative, there's a middle road. There's a middle of the road. Some place where we can find what is absolutely necessary and everything else in moderation. And I think the taxpayers of Pennsylvania, the residents of Pennsylvania, can appreciate that. Certain things do go up, and every once in a while you have to take a look at it. But you have to make sure that it's necessary.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me. Hopefully, we have about 8 weeks to get this done on time. And I'm going to hold out hope that we're going to get it done and get it much better. So thank you very much for joining us. And that's all the time we have for today's program. I'm Representative Ted Nesbit. And if you have any questions about what we've discussed or need assistance with any state matter, feel free to contact me at my local office or through my website. That information will be shown in a moment. Thanks for watching.